Hello, welcome back to another episode of Somewhere Between a Film and TV podcast. I am your host, Daniel Parra, and number one, thank you so much for listening, watching, and all of the stuff. Number two, if you could, please down below, like, comment, subscribe. What did you think of Tron Ares? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you somewhere between on it? I want to know. As for everyone else, if I know I'm late, it's been a week, I was on vacation, I'm sorry, but with that being said, Tron Ares. I'm going to have full spoilers. If you want to know my thoughts overall, it's kind of hard to explain, but we'll get into it. It's okay. But yes, with Tron Ares, what is it about? Mankind encounters AI beings for the first time when a highly sophisticated program, Ares, leaves the digital world for a dangerous mission in the real world. This is directed by Joachim Renning, who, if you are unaware, before he also did Maleficent and Pirates of the Caribbean 5. I am apprehensive to say those titles because, I already didn't really like Maleficent overall as a series, but Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and 5 are entirely different quality than the first three to me. Going into this, I will say this. I am not the biggest fan of Jared Leto. I've gone on record saying that multiple times. So, a movie centered around him isn't exactly a selling point to me. But, I will say he's okay in this. He's one of the better parts of it, if we're being honest with you. But, with this movie, did I love it? Did I hate it? Or am I somewhere between on it? I will put it this way. The name of this channel, Somewhere Between, has never, ever been more accurate about my feelings about a movie ever than this one. It is gorgeous to look at. I saw it in 3D. I heard too. Yes, very well worth it. If you were to even ask me, should I see this in theaters? Yes, you should. In 3D, in the biggest way possible. In the loudest way possible, so hopefully it drowns out how dumb a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the people are in this. Because, mentioning that though, also the score by 9 Inch Nails, phenomenal, so good, it's incredible. It's one of those things where like the moment it starts you're like, Jesus, it's so good. But the negatives are the dialogue here, and the story kinda, and how it chooses to handle a lot of the character motivations and character like peaks and all of that. It's just so like, man, because the action is really well done. It looks really cool. It's all really propulsive. However, the movie and its pacing are so, I don't know, I felt like I was just never quite, it took me a long time to get into it, and even while the action is happening I was like, okay, this stuff's cool, but the actual story itself, I was like, I'm waiting for myself to get invested into the story itself, and it just never happened. Once the moment happens where they go into the 80s like Tron world where Jared Leto goes there, I was like, oh, okay, I was like, now I like what's going on here. And then the second like half that it kind of pivots from that, I liked quite a bit. But what's funny about this is it is, of course, being released in a time of the prevalence of AI. And if we're going to talk about this movie's message and meaning, I don't think it really has one. But if I was going to try to read into it, it's one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, AI could grow to have feelings. What are the ramifications of that? What are the feelings that come from that? And this movie has this as a plot point and never really actually follows through or says anything about it. I was like, okay, well, sci-fi is usually made to make a point. I'm not really quite sure what the point of that is. I'm not even saying there needs to be one. I guess it could just be entertainment, but I'll tell you right now my thoughts on the first two. Tron, I don't really remember. I remember liking it, but Tron Legacy is amazing. That is an incredible movie, also with an incredible score by Daft Punk, and that one I thought what separated that obviously is it's much better written than this one is. I just like really focusing on some of the stuff that was happening here. I thought that Greta Lee's character started off obviously supposed to be like the, you know, the main focal point of emotion. Same goes for Jared Leto, which we'll talk about Ares' trajectory of how he is supposed to be and how he's supposed to be perceived. Ironically enough, it's kind of a Frankenstein situation with the movie coming out next week, and then it's even referenced quite literally, and I mean literal as in the sense of like literary, in that it's even shown and dialogue is mentioned from the Frankenstein novel in this. And I thought that all that stuff, I was like, okay, it is wanting to tackle some of that, and then leaves it, and I was like, what? I just kind of, I spent like every other scene when they would start talking, I would just be like, okay, I mean, none of the dialogue is bad necessarily, except for this one moment. Whenever the dialogue does this, where it's like explaining the exposition, you know, the Suicide Squad thing where it's like, this is Katana, her sword traps the souls of its victims. There's a line like that Greta Lee has to deliver, where she's like, this is the laser propulsion thing, and this belongs to Athena, and this is Athena's, and then she's going to be able to kill us with this. And I was like, why? I'm paraphrasing, but that's how it was written. It just felt like, you know, the equivalent of whenever people are like, so they say someone is attractive or something, they're like, but oh my god, they start talking. That's kind of how this movie was whenever it would have dialogue or things to say, because I was like, I just kind of kept sitting there with that face where I would sort of be staring off, and then I was like, well, you know what? Let's just go ahead and wait for another action scene to happen, because those are really well done, and they are. The light cycle stuff, the costume design, all of the technical production stuff here is amazing, and the Nine Inch Nails score, like I said, is so propulsive. It kind of makes the movie, because the movie itself, I think, would feel aimless if it weren't, which is weird because it is one of those ticking time clock movies. It has a really interesting narrative choice where the character of Ares and the character of Athena, they only have 29 minutes in the real world, and then they evaporate or disintegrate, go back to the grid, and then they have to do it all again. That actually adds to a lot of tension for the scenes in terms of action, and sometimes it gets them out of like tricky situations. But then what I thought was funny about it is occasionally there's like a scene that is so important. They're like, we have 29 minutes to get from this side of town to this side of town, and then get you into the grid. And then the movie just kind of stops, and then they go into a gas station like for comedic relief, and like I get what they were doing, but that it also kind of ruins the actual narrative beat by undercutting it. Like, I mean, the jokes are like okay enough, right? But then it sort of spends this time doing this like bit sort of for comedic relief, and that ends up sort of ruining the tension of how that works. You're like, okay, no, it took them way longer than 29 minutes to get there. There's just no way that happened like that. And I mentioned in my review for the Black Phone 2 that I was like, well, if a movie sets a certain amount of rules and doesn't break them, then I mean, I will respect those rules and I won't call it a plot hole or anything. But I think this one just sort of is like establishes that and then finds ways around it, and then it just started to get distracting to me. I did say that if it were in a better movie, I don't start focusing on stuff like that, but here I was kind of like, hang on, wait, no, you mean to tell me that? And it just kept happening like that for me. But I don't really know what this movie was trying to say in terms of the take on AI. If I were to assume they were like, treat your Alexa better, because you never know when she's going to come out and be a human and then take over. I did forget that Tron was kind of one of those first ones that was like, did you know that viruses are people? And then they show the actual, you know, effect of them taking the other programs out or files or whatever they are, and they're people and they're like protectors, all that stuff. I was like, you know what, that's pretty cool. I was like, I think that I like that kind of world building, which of course they've done already. It's one of those things where I'm like, well, who do I credit that to? Not really the writers of this one. This is kind of just established stuff that they've done before. And this is one of those movies where I was like, I cannot think of the last time I was like, this movie is so gorgeous, but it is so dumb. I genuinely, I think this is one of maybe the first Avatar, because the first Avatar is good, but I don't think it's amazing. The second one I think is amazing. This one here, I was like, man, the action is phenomenal. I really like how it looked. The usage of the cycles and the way that they fight this Tron, what are they called? The light discs, whatever they are really cool. The imagery is fascinating, and you could look at it endlessly. But then once I noticed, it was losing me a bit. I was like, oh, okay, so I can't really be carried by visuals alone. I think I need a little bit more than that for this one, which sometimes, admittedly, yes, style over substance I can fall for, but here this is not one of those times, because the characters, they spend so much time trying to establish what they are. And some of it works. The Jared Leto story where he is the Frankenstein thing, he's developing emotions. He doesn't know his place in the world. He doesn't quite know if he needs to follow orders or be his own person. And it's also Pinocchio too. I thought that was cool. It wasn't done perfectly. I thought that that could have been, expanded on, in the sense that there isn't a lot more done than that, than just the surface level, like, I have feelings now. And I do like that he plays it in a certain way of having no emotion, and then the humor ends up working in his favor, where the comedic relief that comes from him, not the actual comedic relief guy, who I didn't find very funny, but him, where he takes everything so literal and so seriously, or just kind of deadpan says things the way they are to people. Like when he tells, I think it's Gillian Anderson, tells her that he's like, oh, well, you were head of this place with not the most stellar part of its run. I liked that. But it ends up wanting to like try to get you to emotionally care about things that are going on. And I was just like, it's not happening for me, because there's this thing with the actress, his name is Jodie Turner-Smith, who I also liked in this as the antagonist, and ends up being the overall antagonist of this, towards like Evan Peters kills Gillian Anderson, and then that whole moment's supposed to be so emotional. I was like, well, Evan Peters has been playing it up in this kind of hammy way, and I mean, don't get me wrong, I liked him in this, but I was like, this emotional thing that's happening, it's not working. I was like, it's not working for me right now. And one other random additional detail, because like I said, once you start noticing things, I just thought this was funny, is when they send Greta Lee into the grid, when you're downloaded in there, I guess you develop eyeliner on top of your costume when you go into the grid. I was like, that's funny, because then she comes back out and then it's gone again. I was like, I admire that really, really random detail that's in this. And like I said, the chases are really well done. There's one that's done within the context of the grid that is really cool. And there's one that's done sort of in the beginning with the motorcycle chase and the whole, like, we got to get the thing to do the thing, that sort of thing, the MacGuffin. And I thought that was really well done and really effective, between making this character feel like, in jeopardy. And I also liked the final fight that I thought added actual stakes, wherever Jodie Turner-Smith's character is telling Ares, like, if you do this or what did you do, then you've lost the ability to have more than one life, and I will kill you and then finish this. I was like, oh, that's a neat idea. This person that, isn't really experienced humanity yet, what it's like to live, which is kind of how it ends, is really interesting and can be done and has been done. It's just a lot of conceptual stuff here that I'm like, yeah, cool ideas with no execution whatsoever. There's a moment really early where he looks out at the rain, and if it were just done quieter, the way in which it's done, I was like, that's cool. I was like, I think that the idea of, a program possibly seeing rain for the first time, and that's how it develops feelings. That's the whole thing here, is feeling. That word is like so not said right out by them until sort of later in the movie, where it's like, I don't know, it's just a feeling. I liked all that, but it didn't really expand on its own idea and message within the context of the movie. So I'm kind of left there like, well, I mean, I liked what you presented, and then you didn't really dig into any of it. And Greta Lee's character is in this movie so much and never gave me a narrative reason to really care about what's going on. They were talking about how she's like finishing her sister's work because they felt like her sister did something more important than she did, and it wanted her to like pay off the work that she'd set in stone for them in the future and all that. And I was like, I mean, the narrative reasoning all makes sense, but then kind of she gets overshadowed within the context of everything else happening in the movie. She kind of just ends up being one of the running around characters. And I'm like, well, I mean, now I feel like she didn't really get any kind of emotional resolution whatsoever. She does what she has to do at the beginning, and then the movie kind of ends up resolving the feeling of what she's supposed to be doing really early for the context of setting up Ares, which is a whole other thing. I liked the Ares tie-in as well with Ares and Athena and this idea of them being gods of a sort or protectors, because they said like, oh, like the god of war, and then like in contrast turns out that he's not really like that. He's more of a sort of gentle, what would the word for that be, creature, piece of information within the context of the world, which I was like, well, that's a cool idea, where the name ends up kind of contradicting itself, but then it's kind of undercut by a joke where it's like his name means the god of war, but he's a really nice guy. It was sort of funny, but I was like, I'm not one of those people that also thinks that humor needs to be like present and everything, and I don't think it needs to not be present and everything, because I honestly thought the first half of this was so serious, and I was like, we can like chill out a little bit, but the imagery itself is really well done. I love the neon glow of the world. And here's the thing about nostalgia bait, all of that stuff. I am not nostalgic for the 80s or Tron, because I did not exist in the 80s. I was not present for that time. And this does a bit of nostalgia bait where they send Jared Leto's character back into the 80s Tron grid. They recreate it visually, the light cycle and all that, and I thought that was really cool, to be honest with you. I thought it was really well done. I don't need it to be acknowledged that it's like a classic, because he says that line out loud. I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, we're supposed to be like clapping at this point, but then I saw it like a week late, so I didn't really, have that. But then I must have had a Tron super fan next to me, because there's a moment where he gets like the costume and the lights turn all white, and then the lady next to me started clapping like aggressively, and I was like, I just thought I was like, hey, if this is working for you, that awesome, because all the action is what worked for me, and all of the music as well. The performances are okay with what they're given to do, but Evan Peters as an antagonist, I liked his like kind of neurotic like Jesse Eisenberg thing he has going on. He ends up sort of playing it not campy but aggressively like manic, and I liked that choice. I just kind of left cold on this movie because it didn't do enough narratively speaking, and I did myself a huge service. I did not watch Tron Legacy again before I saw this, because I was like, look, I don't want to compare. I don't want to compare like an amazing movie to this. I need to go in with fresh eyes and fresh ears, all the stuff. And I was like, well, coming away with this, what's as good as Legacy is the soundtrack. It's doing overtime, honestly, on this. But overall, I was just so like, I was invested enough, and I didn't mind watching it. But at a certain point, whenever it started to like focus on the character's emotional payoff, is when I was like, I'm sorry, it's not working. It's like, I just don't think that the character narrative works overall. The movie, since it does so much visually and the action is stunning, it ends up making the movie passable for me, but I have a lot of separate issues with the actual character stuff itself, especially when it was presenting interesting ideas. And part of me is just like, okay, what part of this is Disney and what part of this is just like, the writing itself? Or did they get like someone that's, in the writer's room of their like collective, whoever they've got, they're like, hey, you're on Tron Ares, and they're like, hang on, let me look through the whatever ideas we have, I guess, because it just doesn't really follow through on Legacy at all. It had one Easter egg about Legacy that I was like, yes, and then implies that that'll be happening in the next one. But then I saw that Disney was like, no, we're going to retire Tron. I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, why didn't you just make the sequel to Tron Legacy that you were supposed to beforehand? But I thought that, again, the action was amazing. It's really well done. It's really cool. The 3D, whenever I hear to watch something in 3D, I do like Superman was amazing in 3D. This was amazing in 3D. I really liked how the visual, like the aesthetic of red was really present in this. It is well shot, but the writing, again, I kept wondering. I was just like, did they cut something? Is there something here that's missing that would have made this? I don't know, because I noticed it was right under 2 hours, and then there's that cynical part of me that's like, did the studio mandate this and then they cut this? Because I heard that Cameron Monaghan had a huge part in this, and he is in this for like 5 seconds. Actually, no, quite literally. If you count his screen time, I think it might be 30 seconds. I think he might be not in this more than a minute. And just overall, it started making me question that. I was like, and when you have me starting to question that, because Disney, has their certain rep for doing stuff like that, I was like, that's not a good sign. Because if I'm starting to wonder why are the characters underwritten or what's missing, then you know that there's like a key component missing. Because I was like, look, if this were, to me, this is a really visually slick, aesthetic movie that is amazingly shot with amazing music and action, that would have been a great movie if I cared about the characters at all. And I just didn't. Instead, what I got was a passable time that I didn't mind watching because I loved the visuals and I love the music, and I will be listening to the music quite a bit. And it just ended up like, yeah, I am incredibly somewhere between on this. I'm going to give this a score. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5. It's just on the cusp. It's just right there. If you were to ask me, should I see this? Yes, you should. I do think that you need to see this in a theater, though. If you watch this on Disney Plus or whatever, not worth it. But in a theater, in Dolby, in IMAX, in 3D, whatever, do it. Do whatever you can to watch it in that format. Because it was a lot of... I'm going to say this. The Tron ride at Disney World. This is written the equivalent to how much I feel like they put into the effort of dialogue in the Disney World rides, which isn't to say none, but I do think that, like, obviously it's surface level, the characters are present, but they don't need to be telling a dramatic, hefty story, It felt like that to me. And I was like, hey, I mean, if the Tron light cycle coaster and all that, if it turned red and like Spirit of this or whatever, it'd be awesome. But yeah, overall, I thought it was okay. But what did you think of Tron Ares? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Or are you somewhere between on it? I want to know. Up next, it's going to be a really busy week. I am so excited for this. This movie is honestly, like, the person that is behind this movie is the reason why this channel really exists at all. But Shelby Oaks, directed by Chris Stuckman, I am so beyond excited for. Expect that. Also, another movie I am unbelievably excited for is Chainsaw Man, the Reze arc, or Reze. I just saw a trailer again for it today, and they said it. But if I can see it next week, I'm not sure when it's coming out, because I know it's coming out in the Austin area, so I'll be able to watch it in theaters, thank God, is Frankenstein, but I don't think that'll be until next week. But expect those coming up. Shelby Oaks, Chainsaw Man, and what was the third one? It was Frankenstein. Thank you guys again so much for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.